Hello and welcome everyone to this continuing companion series to A.K. Warder's Grammar Guide, an introduction to Pali. And today we come to lesson 21. This is Pali Studies on the Learn Pali channel. Lesson 21 is quite short and, much like the last lesson, is mainly devoted to noun and verb tables. So Warder begins once again with the feminine noun stem, and this time those ending in a long or a short u. And like before, the paradigms for these nouns are much simpler than the masculine, with many cases sharing the same endings. And note, I think there's a typo in Warder's table here. The locative plural is dartusu with a long U. Again, we can see that the two noun endings are almost identical, except for the nominative singular. And they are also in turn similar to the feminines in I, except for swapping the I for an U. So, I think that's all of the feminine noun stems covered now, so we can move on to present participles, specifically those that end with ant. Last week we saw that possessive adjectives can be formed by adding vant or mant to a noun stem. And very similar to this, if you remember back from lesson 8, present participles can be formed by adding nt to a verbal stem. Now, we only saw a partial paradigm table for present participles in lesson 8, so Warder now presents a full one here. And from my research, there seems to be some confusion in grammar guides as to a full present participle paradigm. But I think they decline very similar to the ant of possessive adjectives, vant and mant. Except in the nominative singular, the present participle is ang and not are. And like possessive adjectives, they can also take the normal a stem endings directly to the ant suffix. And the feminine is only found in this form. An exception to this is the present participle of the verb root us, which is sant, meaning being or existing, and this is a little irregular. I can't actually find a full paradigm in the feminine. The locative form, sati, often occurs in locative absolute clauses. For instance, evang sati, meaning it being thus. And a famous example is in the dependent origination formula, which also uses sati in the locative absolute. This translates literally something like this being, this is, but as an absolute clause, the two pronouns refer to two different things. So in English, we're much more likely to say, when this exists, that comes to be. Sant can also be used as an adjective meaning good, real, or true, in which case it also can become a substantive meaning the good or the real. For example, the not good or the bad go to hell, while the good are destined for heaven. And note, it's very easy to confuse the present participle sant with the past participle santa from the verb sam, meaning calmed, which in the locative case is also sati. So next, we return to the pronoun bhavant, which was also in lesson 8. This pronoun is largely used as an honorific form of address, meaning you or sir, and it declines very similar to the present participle, as it is essentially the present participle from the verb boo. But as a pronoun of address, I think it's only found in the masculine and occasionally the feminine. And note that many of the forms are based on the stem bow rather than bava. Okay, let's move swiftly on to the perfect tense of the verbal root a. Now, to all intents and purposes, the perfect tense has the same meaning as the aorist, and the root a, I think, is the only verb in Pali that retains this perfect formation, and it's only ever found in the third person endings. It basically indicates an indefinite past time, as in he said or they said. And if you want an overview of verb tenses in Pali, check out the tutorial appearing above now. And finally, we come to repetitions. We actually touched on this in lesson 12. Pali often repeats words for effect and most often for emphasis. For instance, tita tita, stay stay, means to stop. Repeated demonstrative pronouns can have a distributive effect, as in here and there, this and that, whilst repeated relative pronouns can indicate generality, whoever, wherever, whichever. And in a relative clause, when the relative term is repeated, the corresponding demonstrative is also repeated. Well, that brings lesson 21 to an end. And once more, Warder gives us several pages of vocabulary, followed by the exercises. The answers to the exercises are linked in the description below. And next week we'll return once again to consonantal noun stems, reflexive pronouns, and a third look at Bahu-Bihi compounds. And if you can't wait that long, check out my other tutorials, and of course there's always my blog.